The theme for the graduation ceremony is Scaling Education and Research for Sustainable Development. Kenyatta University, transforming higher education, enhancing lives.
Hello there and good evening. You're just right on time for KUTV Primetime News. This is the 8th of December, the year 2023. Indeed, we have much and more lined up for you, including our discussion tonight, where we took a look, or rather we take pile of matters, climate change. Remember this particular topic, the climate change is actually on the rise, and this is a global phenomenon that is happening. The writings are on the wall. So what are some of the actions that we as Kenyans, the African, and of course the world at large, what must we do to actually avert this, the ever imminent and looming disaster that is staring right on our face, but we have the information. So what does it take to actually tackle this monster? That is the discussion we're having tonight, and we'll pay much emphasis on agriculture. Remember, much of the conversation has been on the fossil fuel, but tonight we shift that discussion a little bit to agriculture, because this is in line with the global and matters to do with climate change. That is the discussion we'll be having with my guest tonight, Dr. Victor Yamo. This is Farming Campaign Manager at the World Animal Protection. So it is a discussion that I'm sure you don't want to miss out, because we have plenty to talk about. Remember, it's just recently that the COP28, the Matter Climate Summit has just concluded. So what are some of the recommendations? What are some of them, the key highlights to take home, a takeaway home, now that given the fact that it is for the first time that Africa as a bloc has actually presented their common agenda. This is owing to the climate summit that was held here in Nairobi, that is in September, and that we had, or rather that gave birth to Nairobi Declaration. Plenty more to talk about, but first thing first, our top stories tonight.
Tonight, employment abroad not too fast. Ruto says Kenyans planning to work overseas will now have to undergo NYS training. Setting the record straight, NEC vehemently refute claims that the 2023 KCSE results are set to be announced before Christmas. Also tonight, arrest them. Manyatta lawmaker wants NEC officials arrested for messing up the 2023 KCP results. Plus, sweet but bitter in the end. Uganda leaves Kenya with bitter taste after defeat in the Sekafa Under-18 final.
This is KUTV Primetime News with AUMA EVANS.
All right, Joy Mtava will be assisting us on the sign language interpretation department. Remember, you can be part of this conversation and part of this broadcast tonight as we keep pile on top of our stories and of course the discussion that we'll be having tonight with you. And remember, you can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are live on YouTube at KUTV News Live. You can tweet us at KUTV_Kenya, that is on X. And you can tag me along at AUMA EVANS. Keep the conversation. And remember, the hashtag to use always is Primetime News. So tonight we begin our bulletin tonight with matters politics, rather where the Kenya is planning to work, or rather Kenyans planning to work abroad will now have to undergo National Youth Service training first. This follows President William Ruto's announcement today in Nakuru County, where he presided over the National Youth Service recruitment pass-out parade. While defending the move, Ruto stated that it will go a long way in ensuring that Kenyans offer credible services in the international job market. Vivian Opio reports.
At the NYS Paramilitary Academy in Gilgil, Nakuru County, 10,521 National Youth Service officers who underwent 6 months of training were ready to say goodbye as they showcased what they do best, which is their final assignment at the institution. They have to prove to the head of state that indeed they have come of age as they exit to serve the country in different capacities. President William Ruto, who presided over the ceremony, said that NYS will be the central organization for pre-deployment and training of Kenyans seeking to work outside the country.
We are concluding negotiations with another 8 countries on export of labor, and the National Youth Service is going to be the central organization for pre-deployment training so that Kenyans understand what they need to do when they go out for work.
The head of state said that the NYS officers will be given first priority in employment as security officers in different sectors in the country, as the ministry will employ 80% of NYS recruits.
Wale wote watakaoajiriwa kwa jeshi la Kenya, kwa polisi wa Kenya, Kenya Forest Service, Kenya Wildlife Service, asilimia 80% watakuwa hawa vijana ambao wamefuzu kutoka National Youth Service.
President Ruto also said that the salary of the servicemen and women will be increased by 40% as from next year as a way of motivating them.
National Youth Service, beginning the next financial year for 3 years, their salaries will be increased by 40%. Going into the future.
Ruto further promised that the government is going to double the number of records annually come next year to absorb more youths in the service.
We have embarked on a strategic re-engineering of the National Youth Service to enhance the capacity of the institution to take up greater numbers of trainees, position it on the path of financial sustainability through revenue generation.
The National Youth Service is a state corporation mandated to transform, develop skills, and empower Kenyan youth to develop disciplined, hardworking, and patriotic citizens for national development. Vivian Opio for KUTV.
Right, thank you, Vivian Opio, for that. Now, Transport and Road Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen has launched a petition against Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei over the corruption accusation involving 15.3 billion. CS Murkomen is accusing Senator Cherargei of defamation following the allegations that the CS collected over 15.3 billion shillings bribe from a Chinese company, China Wanwai, in an early in the year. The CS on 29th November had written to Cherargei seeking a public apology in the alleged accusation. Senator Cherargei was speaking at the Senate when CS Murkomen was summoned to explain the state of roads and other infrastructure in the country. While Cherargei asserted that Murkomen had already received over 7.6 billion shillings of the said bribe, further alleging that this is why the CS was allegedly advocating for Chinese to receive contract in the country, while local citizens are denied of the same contract. Well, amid widespread rumors, the Kenya National Examination Council, or if you prefer the acronym NEC, firmly refuted claims that regarding release date of the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education results. NEC clarified that marking process for the KCSE exam is ongoing, emphasizing that no official statement has been made regarding the same. The release date, or rather the Examination Council, also assured that the results will be unveiled upon completion of the marking, dismissing reports suggesting a specific time frame for the result release. Now let's take matters, examination. Manyata Member of Parliament John Gitonga Mkunje want guilty Kenya National Examination Council arrested, and as Christine Adhiambo reports, this demand comes after several discrepancies that were witnessed in just released Kenya Certificate of Primary Education that has left scores of Standard 8 leavers and teachers frustrated by the outcome.
While speaking in Embu Market, Manyata Member of Parliament John Gitonga Mkunje criticized the haste with which exams were marked and results released. He demanded that the Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu launch an investigation to establish the cause of errors witnessed in the results.
Mtu yoyote ambaye atapatikana na makosa either through negligence, ama omission, ama commission, tunaomba ashukuliwe hatua, kwa sababu wale watoto already wenye wameweza kupata result ambazo hazieleweki wameshapata trauma yenye saa hizi serikali haiwezi walipa.
This demand comes after a revelation by Ezekiel Machogu that a forensic audit will be done on the examinations and result will be posted after 14 days. CS Machogu, while addressing the members of parliament, said that the confusion was only noticed in the short messages. He maintained that correct results were found in the NEC portal and the same are in the printout sent to schools. Previously, a section of parents, pupils and teachers had appealed to NEC to review the results. Bandacho Primary School head teacher Constance Maria wrote a letter on the same. Similar sentiments were shared by AIC Malindi head teacher Steve Ojuok, who was astonished to realize that all of his candidates had similar grades in science and social studies.
Jibu vile alivyotokea, yale matokeo yani vile alivyo, yameshangaza shule nzima, yameshangaza mpaka wazazi. Maana watoto walitayarishwa zaidi hata kushinda wale wa mwaka jana.
Ridhika na result ya masomo ya science na masomo ya social studies. Mpaka leo hatujawahi jua ni nini inafanyika. Marks tunatarajia marks nyingi sana wakati watoto wamefanya mtihani, lakini matokeo yanapotokea tunashtuka kwamba
the impending forensic auditing of the KCP 2023 results is expected to provide closure on what might have transpired with examinations. AUMA EVANS for KUTV, Nairobi.
Initiative Summit has today come to a close after a 5-day stakeholders engagement summit that took place at Kenyatta University Manu Chandaria Business and Innovation Building. The forum, organized in collaboration with the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, aimed to assist youth in growing their businesses and fostering innovation. The event focused on highlighting all the achievements accomplished by the organization and devising future plans. Our very own Yvonne Kemuma attended the summit, and here is her report.
We are mindful of the need for true Pan-African development to include as many people as possible. And so while we have made tremendous progress, we do cover 49 countries. We've had alumni from 49 countries, men and women, people with disabilities. There's always more we can do, and this is a process of continual improvement.
I think what we're working towards now is to create YALI Africa, which would be the overarching body that will coordinate activities across the 4 centers. So that will assist us in making sure that we harmonize how we deliver the program across the 4 centers.
All right, now matters gender-based violence. Now, teenagers' pregnancy have been on the rise in Migori County. This is according to Seth Midio, Migori health official in charge of child adolescent health activities in Uriri sub-county. Majority of the teenager pregnancies, or rather teenage pregnancies, have been as a result of defilement cases. The ongoing 16 days of activism against gender-based violence aim to raise awareness about its repercussion, including teenage pregnancies, HIV infection, and child labor, as Virginia Mudeu explained in the following report.
Defilement has emerged as the primary cause of teenage pregnancies in Migori County. Seth Mideyo, the Migori health official overseeing adolescent health in cases and gender-based violence, as major contributors to the county's 19% teenage pregnancy rate.
There is also need for a lot of integrated services towards achieving zero teenage pregnancies and zero GBV cases in this particular sub-county, and particularly in this ward.
Assistant County Commissioner Watson Hinzano has emphasized the importance of empowering young girls, stating that empowerment is pivotal to transforming societal attitudes towards gender-based violence.
People who are organizing events that promote cases of gender-based violence, especially disco matangas and people who are brewing illicit brews. We want to put you on notice that your days are numbered.
Meanwhile, Ripple Effect NGO official Rose Muita elaborated that the organization has been helping the community through a sensitization program in the fight against HIV, teenage pregnancies, and gender-based violence.
We've partnered together with the CMMB, the Luala community, the MOH, the national government, to make sure that our girls, our women, our men are aware and they really know what affects them in the community when it comes to gender-based violence.
Luciana Akoth, a Uriri police station officer, assured the public of diligent prosecution for defilement cases, emphasizing the severe legal consequences for offenders.
We're working hand in hand with the chiefs. We make sure that the perpetrator is arrested and taken to court. Also, during these holidays, the cases tend to rise very much, and we are here to sensitize the community so that they come out and report such cases.
Mambo ya muziki tunajaribu kabisa, hata imepungua. West Kanyamkago kwetu, tukisikia kuna muziki ambao italeta shida, mambo ya wanafunzi kupata mimba ya mapema, hatuwezi kukubaliana. Na hata mambo ya pombe tunapigania kabisa.
The ongoing 16 days of activism against gender-based violence aims to raise awareness about the repercussions, including teenage pregnancies, HIV infections, and child labor. Residents have been urged to report all cases relating to GBV to relevant authorities. Virginia Mudeu, KUTV.
Right, that story by Virginia Mudeu takes us to our first break here on KUTV Primetime News. Remember, plenty more to follow after the break. See you.
Kenyatta University will hold its 54th graduation ceremony on Friday, 15th December 2023 at the main campus along Thika Superhighway. KUTV will provide live coverage of the graduation ceremony. The graduation will also be streamed live on KUTV, KU Radio, KU website, and all KU social media platforms. For more information, please contact the Office of the Registrar Academic on 020-870-3092 or 0786-335-111 or visit the Kenyatta University website on www The theme for the graduation ceremony is Scaling Education and Research for Sustainable Development. Kenyatta University, transforming higher education, enhancing lives. Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audiovisual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
They speak to play politics.
Kila mara yeye ananiwinda kama mnyama. Naambia yeye Mungu iko. Mungu iko na sitarudi nyuma.
They speak words strong enough to change policy and the law.
We have a very democratic system. We have a system that is based on the rule of law.
They speak to the heart of the nation for the nation.
Simu imeleta mambo mingi sana. Mimi hata nataka ifungwe kabisa, na ifungwe hata WhatsApp na Facebook zifungwe kabisa.
When facts get lost in all these words, we aim for the truth. Join me, Dennis Omondi, every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. as I serve you the news and speak to your leaders and their observers to establish nothing but the truth. Only on KUTV.
The same voice that comes from a human being is not the same one that you can be able to generate using synthetic voices, even though parts of the print will be similar, but most of it won't be.
8 kilos kwa eka. Ukiweka zaidi itakuwa mbaya. Najua hii nyazi inatumia sagas. Inamea hivi, inatoa sagas. Inaenda inashika chini tena inatoa sagas. Hivyo. Sasa alabu itanona, unaona haisieki sababu sichaweka mingi. Sasa ukikata baada ya 2.5 months inakata.
Focus on Health is a show that creates awareness on matters health and informs you on various diseases, their causes, treatment, prevention, coping, and support. So join me, Bari Michelle, every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. only on KUTV. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at KUTV Focus on Health on Facebook and also on YouTube, and Health Focus on Instagram, because your health is your wealth. Stay safe and stay healthy.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with AUMA EVANS.
Right, welcome back and thank you for always keeping it Primetime News. Now remember, this is where our discussion, or rather our conversation, begins right now. And of course, it all matters, climate change, and we are paying a lot of emphasis tonight in this discussion on the climate change in regard to agriculture. So we want to take a look at, the farming methods, and I'm glad to be joined by Dr. Victor Yamo, Farming Campaigns Manager at World Animal Protection. And of course, thank you so much, Doc, for making time to have this, very important discussion with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
And even before we dive into, our topic of rather our area of discussion tonight, I just want you to paint to us, a picture of this, the climate change. This is a global phenomenon. It is actually affecting us in one way or the other. Yeah. So just, tell us the seriousness of this climate change.
Yeah, thanks, Evans. The reality is that over the last couple of years, maybe the last decade, we've seen significant changes in our weather patterns. Currently, as you can see, we are going through an El Nino or a flooding situation, which is costing us lives at certain levels. It's also costing us livelihoods because people's crops are being washed away, animals are also not finding pastures to eat, if you look at it from an agricultural perspective. But it's also leading rise to certain diseases. And part of what we are seeing is a significant change in disease patterns in the country. And so also beyond that, you also remember that last year we had a drought. And so the weather patterns have also significantly changed from the traditional 2 rainy season pattern that we used to have. We are now not very clear when the rains are starting. They either delay, which then affects the farming community, and realize that this country is agricultural, and significant amount of food is actually coming from the smallholders. So if we are then having challenges with the weather, they can't get pastures because of droughts, or in drought situations, they can't get water to water their crops, then you can see the impact that it's having not only on the livelihoods of the farmers, but also on the food situation. So it's also threatening food security because we are not able to grow our foods and to feed ourselves as traditional. So there's a series of things we are looking at in that discussion around COP28 and climate change.
All right.
Yep.
At a time when much, focus and emphasis has been laid on, the fossil fuels, talk to us about, the aspect of climate change in regard to agriculture. How does it affect this particular area?
Yeah, thanks again, Evans. Good question. For a very long time, it was believed that climate change was being driven by fossil fuel, the fuel that we're using for our vehicles and to drive our big industries. But the reality is, which is draining down into the research world, is that the significant proportion, it is estimated by Food and Agriculture Organization that about 33% or 1/3 of greenhouse gases is actually coming from the food that we eat. And remember the levels of how it's coming. First, the agricultural sector is also mechanized, so it's using fossil fuels at a certain level. It's estimated that about 15% of greenhouse gases coming from fossil fuel is actually coming from agricultural production systems, either using the tractors, the mechanization, the distribution processes of that food that then needs to be looked at. But significant contribution is also coming from the production system itself. When you do agriculture, number one, you tend to plow. When you're plowing, you basically are releasing carbon from the soils into the atmosphere, which then causes partly contributes to greenhouse gases. But also the animals that we are keeping, especially intensification of that system where we are keeping a lot of animals in small spaces, what we are calling industrial livestock production systems or factory farming, is also contributing because the animals are then producing significant greenhouse gases, especially methane and ammonia, that then contributes to the process. So essentially what we have been trying to do as an organization for the last 2 or 3 years is to try to get governments to realize that it's not only fossil fuels that we need to be looking at, but we're also supposed to be looking at contributions coming from agriculture. And I think COP28 significantly has got it right, because one of the things that is coming out is that countries are beginning to recognize that contribution that comes from agriculture. And you remember that agriculture then is in the third world, or in the global south or Africa, the low to middle income countries. Agriculture then suffers from consequences of climate change, because smallholder farmers cannot be able to grow because of the impact of what is happening. And so that's part of the discussion we're having. How do we then go back to what we are calling sustainable, regenerative, agroecological production systems that are sensitive to the environment and has less impact on climate?
All right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned about, changing tax. Yeah. And of course, we have, information is out there. At least now we have a majority of people knows about the effect of climate change, and there has been some mitigations to actually try to avert this global disaster. But when you look at the effort from, now that from the time people actually took this climate action, or rather climate change, as a serious and a serious issue that affect them, their daily aspect of life. Yeah. When you look at all these mitigations and the effort, is it really enough at a time when we can actually, see the effect that it can cause to humanity?
Yeah, I think, in my own honest opinion, I think we are slowly getting there. We've had a series of COPs. COP is a UN of a process that was delivered by the Paris Agreement, the coming together of parties to then have a discussion around what needs to happen. Initially, we were looking at keeping the temperatures, the global warming temperatures, by reducing it by 1.5 degrees, and countries were supposed to contribute. But significantly, and I think if you look at what has happened this year, especially from an African perspective, where in September we hosted the Africa Climate Summit, or Africa Climate Week. It's about Africa coming together and saying, we are the people who are having the greatest impacts because of climate change, but we are not the biggest polluters. The biggest polluters are in the global north, or the highly developed countries. And so it's a question of then trying to ask ourselves, how do we get these people who have been the biggest polluters and drivers of climate change to put money or resources to mitigate, so that the third world countries or the low to middle income countries are not struggling with some of these things. And remember that there are issues we are looking at. We're looking at things like health. And so today, one of the things that is significantly come out is people saying we'll put $77 billion towards looking at tropical diseases, especially neglected tropical diseases. A few days ago, there was the issue of saying we need to look at agriculture and drive our agriculture back to sustainable, humane, sustainable, and agroecological systems that make sense and do not pollute the environment. So I think we are slowly getting there. The challenge has been over the last couple of years is that the big countries then make pledges, and the pledges are not turning out, or the commitments are not coming through. And I think that's part of what the presidency currently, the President of the Republic of Kenya, who chairs the Africa Climate Summit, process, has been trying to say that we need to look at the way we are then managing that process of getting money being brought in. It's just not about pledging, it's about then making commitments and following through. Because if you don't do that, then we might not be able to actualize what we are saying that we need to do.
Okay. Yeah. Even as we talk about, the funding issue, there is, research that shows that a new and expanded fuel project could be the end of humanity. Could be the end of humanity. So this is a very serious matter that actually requires serious attention, because this is a crisis, and it's actually, like they say, the writings are on the wall. It is there for everyone to see, and this is actually the real disaster. So when you look at these mitigations that have been put forward, countries coming up and actually taking the mantle to spearhead this fight, this one really, it caused alarm, if you ask me. So when I ask about if you are actually, doing enough, or is it rather coming too late, for this one? Because going by the statistics,
yeah,
we might probably have, maybe no planet to live in.
I think I hear your concern, Evans, but the reality is that there are certain mechanisms that are already in place. They might have not worked. I think the world is beginning to start clearly appreciating that we have a problem. And the multitude or magnitude of the problem is beginning to come out clearly. That's why you can see there's a shift. We are no longer just talking about fossil fuels. We are all now talking about how do we drive the process around getting a good energy, green energy, that then mitigates. And you can see what has happened in out in Dubai is that certain commitments have even been made to the Kenyan government around driving processes around looking at alternative green energy, Olkaria, eco groups, that kind of thing. So I think the world is beginning to recognize that, but the world is also saying we cannot remain where we have been, and that's why there's also that shift that is beginning to say, let's look at agriculture. Yeah, and let's look at what is happening in agriculture. How do we then drive this process to ensure that it's sustainable? What do we need to look at to ensure that the production systems are not contributing further to that process? And that's why there are certain things around sustainability of agriculture. Then at the last bit is also saying climate change is not only causing adverse effects because of climate, but it's also driving disease. And that's why there's now a whole discussion around climate change and health outcomes and how do we manage that. So I think people are shifting towards the right way.
Talking about shifting towards the right way, even as we prepare to take our first break, our very short break here, well, what actually really worries me, when you look at, the issues as far as the fight for this climate, climate change is concerned, we have the biggest polluters that we call them. Some of them sit in those meetings. They actually, some of them even formulate ways to actually try to mitigate, but at the same time, they still continue to, contribute to this climate, change. Now, this is what we call the double standard speaking. Does it worry you as a stakeholder?
It does at certain levels, and that's why I said it's not just about making commitments, it's also about following through those commitments. But I also think that if you've been following the climate discussion, the discussion has moved away from the big global organizations and has started going to the mwananchi on the ground. For instance, if you look at what happened during the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi, there was the main summit at KICC that was driven by the governments and the people you're trying to allude to. But there was a side event where there were the indigenous people saying, we want an alternative pathway. And I think those voices, we need to coalesce around that to start driving that process. So that's one of the things that's happening. There's a lot of sensitization. A lot of us are now beginning to realize, hang on, there's a problem here. What do we need to do to shift away from it? Is it the food that we eat? Is it the fuel that we use? What do we need to do differently? Professions are beginning to look at things differently. Architects are beginning to look at building houses that are energy efficient so that they are not becoming part of the pollution. Production systems are beginning to look at what do we need to do. In fact, as an organization, we are saying we need to stop the proliferation of factory farming, the big farms, and start looking at, from an African perspective, how we go back to the humane, sustainable, and agroecological pastoral production systems that were a bit more lenient to the environment. From a nutrition perspective, we're even saying we maybe need to start eating less meat, and there's a whole discussion around just transition so that the protein sources are looked at differently, because the process of producing meat is extremely inefficient, uses a lot of water and uses a lot of resources. It is even leading to deforestation, because we are then clearing forests to grow to have these big farms and to grow food that goes to animal feed industry, which then goes into that process. And the waste project, managing that waste is also something that we're looking at. So there are significant things that and progress that is being looked at.
Fair enough. Well, we want to take a very short break, and when we come back, remember the discussion still continued. So we take this short break, but we'll be back with this discussion.
They speak to play politics.
Kila mara yeye ananiwinda kama mnyama. Naambia yeye Mungu iko. Mungu iko na sitarudi nyuma.
They speak words strong enough to change policy and the law.
We have a very democratic system. We have a system that is based on the rule of law.
They speak to the heart of the nation for the nation.
Simu imeleta mambo mingi sana. Mi hata nataka ifungwe kabisa, na ifungwe hata WhatsApp na Facebook zifungwe kabisa.
When facts get lost in all these words, we aim for the truth. Join me, Dennis Omondi, every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. as I serve you the news and speak to your leaders and their observers to establish nothing but the truth, only on KUTV.
Proverbs chapter 20, verses 13, and it says this: if you spend your time sleeping, you will be poor. Uko busy ukilala, kuna wengine wako busy owning lands, marking their territory spiritually. Umejaribu pombe, umejaribu wanawake, wanaume, but then unashanga, okay, why am I still empty?
You are watching KUTV Primetime News.
Right, welcome back, and now the discussion continues. Remember, I am here with Dr. Victor Yamo. This is Farming Campaign Manager at World Animal Protection. And of course, before we went on that short break, we are having a very interesting conversations on matters, climate change, and we tackle a couple of issues here and there. And I want us to switch gears and now talk through, or rather focus our attention to, matters, let's say, some of the sustainability agricultural process that we can actually adopt even as we help, or rather embark on this climate change action campaign. All right, so talk to me about, because this is your area of, focus. So what are some of these adaptation mechanisms that we can actually embark on so that we can, help in this fight against climate change?
I think the big one is to minimize the proliferation of what we are calling factory farms. Mm-hmm. And factory farms, essentially, as I said, is a big production unit with a lot of animals squeezed into certain small spaces. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we are talking about it is because factory farming in itself contributes to climate change at certain levels. The first one, and the major one that we are looking at, is the animal feeds that go into feeding these animals. Mm-hmm. You realize that for you to feed that massive number of animals in an enclosed space, you need to grow a lot of maize and a lot of soya that then goes into that feed process. That process leads to deforestation because you are clearing forests in order to get space to grow that the required feed inputs, mm-hmm. and that then leads to greenhouse contributes to climate change because you are releasing carbon into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that the animals themselves are also releasing certain gases that are related to greenhouse gases, mm-hmm. methane, for instance, and ammonia, that are critical. Mm-hmm. The third thing that we also need to look at coming through that production system is, in fact, that beyond just causing climate change, it is also leading to biodiversity loss because we are clearing forests. And it's also leading to a lot of environmental waste and contamination because the manure that comes from these houses, the chicken or pig houses, where do you put them? You put it back into the environment. If it has some level of contamination with pesticides or chemicals that are used in production, then you are looking at it. But the biggest thing that I think we need to understand is that that production system is very inefficient because when you give an animal, and let's use energy for this matter, if you give the animal maize and soya that constitutes about 100 kilojoules, the animal is only able to convert 33% back to you as a human. So the part of the debate, and that's what the just transition is all about, is do we really need to eat that much animals or to produce that much animals? Maybe for the sake of saving the planet, we might need to transition into another protein source, or the alternative proteins or plant-based proteins for that matter. And I think that is something that even World Health Organization is beginning to look at because of the contribution that comes from excessive consumption of meat. So I think one of the things also I'm trying to say is, so that we are not misquoted, is that we are not saying don't eat meat. I think that needs to go out clearly. We are saying eat meat, but with moderation, because beyond certain levels, the meat also works against your health. That's what drives non-communicable diseases, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, etc., cancer, etc., which is becoming a big issue in Africa for that matter. So I think that's what we are saying. So as an organization, we are saying, let's go back to the traditional systems. In our villages where we came from, and in our natural smallholder production systems, we had systems that were agroecologically sensitive, they were sustainable, and they were giving us very good, were able to feed us, unlike the intensification that is clearly showing that it's not only unable to feed us, but it's also a threat to food security. In fact, in our recent report that we launched on Tuesday, one of the things that came out was that factory farming is actually replacing smallholder production systems. It means it's actually threatening livelihoods of almost 1.7 billion people, because what simply is happening is you're replacing maybe 15, 20 farmers with one farm.
All right.
So the employment of those people and the livelihoods of those people is lost. They become destitute because not all of them can be absorbed by the big farms. Remember, the big farms are talking about efficiency. They're talking about less people, but using the system a bit more efficiently, and mechanization for that level. So that's part of the things that we're looking at, and that's why we're saying, for us, it's important to go back to the traditional agroecological, sustainable production systems, but also look at a just transition so that we balance the meat production or animal production with plant-based proteins. The reality right now, if you look at agricultural land, 80% of agricultural land globally is actually being used to farm animals. But animals only contribute about 30% of your requirements for proteins and energy. And that is something that we then need to balance.
All right. Yeah. Well, Doc, you talk about, this is knowledge, of course. And when you talk about the foreseeable disaster, we have we can see like we have issues to do with flooding. After flooding, we'll have drought, something like that. So we can actually plan ahead of this. So how can we use this information that we have at our fingertip to actually take advantage of this climate action and even avert?
Good question, Evans. I think part of it is about you and I making certain decisions. And for me, the most critical one is how do we drive our governments to take positions and to ensure that they implement what they say. I have to give you a good example. In the climate action thing, we have what is known as national climate action plans. I think Kenya did theirs in 2017. The reality is that implementation becomes a challenge, and again, as a country, I think that is something that we need to be looking at. So part of what we need to push our county government and national governments to do is to say, here are the plans. It's not about going to Dubai and being part of the process. It's about saying the requirement for COP, the Conference of Parties, is that each country does a national climate action plan. Where is our plan and what is it saying? What process are we going through to implement it, so that when it says we need to mitigate issues around the contribution of agriculture, is it that, and we made commitment in Nairobi Declaration, we said the same thing, that we need to revert back to smallholder and protect smallholder production systems, which are sustainable, agroecological, and regenerative. Is that what the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock in this country is doing? Is that what the county ministries of agriculture are doing? We need to hold these people accountable so that whatever they make commitments to, it's not about going to Nairobi and having a Nairobi Declaration during the Africa Climate Summit. It's not about going to Dubai COP28 and having declarations that give us money. It's about ensuring that that money is used to implement the National Climate Action Plan that we have developed and we own, because that then starts to solve and address the issues that we are dealing with.
Well, that is a very important point of aspect that you have raised, and this actually begs the question: these leaders, do they understand issues to do with climate? And if they do they actually know how serious it is? And of course, if they have the answer to the second question, the third one will be, so what is the action plan? Because we have seen a lot of declaration, of course, and we are recently, in regards to agriculture, we have seen countries like US now committing to this sustainable agriculture. So this is for those who are out there passing the message and actually, spearheading this particular process. Their message is pretty clear, and now we can see the results. There is some action being, activated as far as this, climate action in regard to agriculture is concerned. But the question is, to our leaders, do they know the seriousness that it deserves? Because that is the only way we can tackle the problem at the root.
Evans, I will not purport to talk on behalf of our leadership, because I don't think I am the competent authority to talk on their behalf. But I think it's us as citizens to ask ourselves, what is my leader doing about this issue?
Good.
Yeah. If I hear that Kenya has a climate action, national action plan, which was developed in 2017, what are we doing? Is it possible for me to hold my leader accountable? Because I think part of where we fail as Kenyans is we are not holding our leadership accountable.
All right.
We are letting them go away without addressing the pertinent issues that are really affecting us. And I think that's where we need to start. But at an individual level, we also need to take certain responsibility and start asking ourselves, what is it that the world is saying? What are the commitments that are being made? In these commitments, what is my role? Because if you go and look at your climate action plan or the other plans or strategies that have been put in place, there's a role for me, you and I as citizens to drive some of these things. But I think we've taken a step back and allowed our leadership to drive these processes without being held accountable. So I think that's the first one. The second one is there are various things that you can do in terms of making personal decisions. When you talk about a just protein transition, what does that mean for me as a Kenyan?
Okay.
Because it's about consumption. And we are saying it's about protein consumption. So what is it that I'm eating? Am I part of the process? Or there are things that I need to do to ensure that my health is better catered for, which then lessen the impact onto climate change and the other topical and major issues that we're dealing with as a planet, because it's not only climate change, the other key things that we're looking at. So I think that's what we need to look at, is engage our leadership at certain levels and look at what they're doing. When there is climate change, who has gone to Dubai? What have they been doing in Dubai? Are they part of the problem, or are they part of the solution?
All right, well, good question there.
Yeah.
But because we're running out of time, I'll give you this, pretty fast, just 1 minute, something like that, for your closing remark.
I think for me the important thing is climate change is there. It is critical and important that we appreciate that climate change is not about fossil fuels alone. It's also about the food we eat and how we grow it and how we transport it. And beyond that, climate change is not just about climate. It has impacts on various sectors. As we've seen in Dubai, it has impacts on the livelihoods and food security of the third world countries. It has impacts on health because it's driving changes in disease patterns, to put it simply. So it's something that we need to stay alert on. It's something that we need to hold our leaders accountable for. It's something that we need to start appreciating that the little things that we are doing are contributing significantly to climate and the climate change that we're looking at. And if we are going to be able to reverse it, we need to all of us take action and be accountable in that process.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm afraid that is where we'll have to leave it at that for tonight. Well, Dr. Victor Yamo, asante sana for making time.
Karibu.
All right. Well, we proceed now in our subsequent county wrap-up report. And of course, a team of 50 divers has been sent to the Indian Ocean to rescue 4 fishermen feared to have drowned in the sea a week ago. Elsewhere, leaders in Kirinyaga County have set up a rescue facility to help eradicate gender-based violence. Listen in.
In Malindi, a team of 50 divers and fishermen have been sent into the deep sea to find the bodies of 4 fishermen who are presumed to have drowned in the Indian Ocean a week ago. The search team embarked on this perilous journey at approximately 1 p.m. on Thursday, having been provided with lifebuoys and nets secured through the efforts of Malindi Member of Parliament Amina Laura Mnyazi.
Viwaine wameenda na hawajapatikana. Tunaomba serikali iweze kutia manani tendo tukio hili. Inapowezekana tukaweze kupata vifaa. Rescue boat wavuvi wameomba sana. Na pia vile vile kupitia kwa serikali Kenya Maritime Authority tuweze kupata helikopta ambayo inaweza kuzunguka kule bahari Hindi kuweza kuwatafuta hao.
Fishermen have been urged to use life-saving equipment and boats whose quality has been approved by the Kenya Maritime Authority to avoid more incidences at the sea. Malindi Divisional Assistant County Commissioner Irene Munyoki further encouraged fishermen to report accident as soon as possible to avoid a crisis.
Ambacho ningeuliza wavuvi na mashirika yote ambayo yameandikishwa kule kwa BMUs ni ya kwamba tatizo likitokea ama tukio likitokea kule waweze kuripoti mara moja. Hilo tukio ambalo limefanyika juzi limechukua muda sana kama halijaripotiwa.
Elsewhere, leaders in Kirinyaga County have called for a joint effort to end gender-based violence. This follows the surge of such cases in the county. County Executive Member for Gender and Youth Millicent Nyawira encouraged residents to report gender-based violence cases, adding that the county government has put in place gender-based violence desks and empowerment programs for the victims.
Everyone at their level should fight and speak against GBV. As we speak, there's an ongoing construction of a GVRC in Kerugoya Hospital. This facility will help us to handle more GBV cases.
She also warned that the gender-based violence takes various forms such as emotional, physical, and sexual, urging the residents to coexist peacefully. Christine Adhiambo for KUTV.
Right, time for the latest in the world of sports. Now, Uganda proved to be too strong for national under-18 football team Junior Stars after subjecting Kenya to a 2-1 defeat in the finals of the CECAFA under-18 at the Jomo Kenyatta Stadium in Kisumu County. Junior Stars were the first to test opponents' net, courtesy of Cyprus Owor goal in the 65th minute before Uganda staged a comeback to force the match into extra time after a 1-1 draw at full time. Uganda added the second goal in the extra time to hand Kenya their first defeat of the tournament. Now, Kinoru Stadium in Meru County will play host to the Safaricom Chapa Dimba Eastern Regional Finals this weekend, with 8 teams for 4 boys and 4 girls lined up for a regional title clash. Mavoko Starlets from Machakos will take on Siomunyu Secondary School from Kitui County in the first clash, while Garbatula United from Isiolo County will face off Predators from Embu in the boys' match. In the women, Saku Queens from Marsabit will be aiming for the title when they meet Chuka University Starlets in the second girls' semi-finals, with the final set for Sunday.
Tunafeel too fiti sana ku represent Tharaka Nithi County to the regionals, na ni hard work fiti, tumetoka far na tuna believe pia with the good support ya our coaches tutafika mbali, tutajaribu our best. Tumeona kama boys wengi pamoja. Nasema tu Chapadime imeleta unity kwa team, unity in the county, na tumemeet great players, tumelearn.
Right, that's a wrap, and many thanks for all those who made this production a success. Of course, my name is AUMA EVANS. Joy Mutava has been our sign language interpreter tonight. Until next time, it's a bye-bye and do have a lovely night.